Bojo Kinawea, Wabgijik Nin, Ngi Jabi an Manda Mzinigan, Moon of the Turning Leaves, Jinkade. Hi everyone, I'm Wabgijik. I wrote this book. It's called Moon of the Turning Leaves. It's been out for a couple of months now, and it features some of the Anishinaabemowin language throughout the novel. And I wanted to take a few minutes to just explain how some of the Anishinaabemowin words sound throughout the book for some of you readers who may not necessarily be familiar with the Anishinaabe language. And I just thought it was a good opportunity to offer up my perspective on the language and why it was important for me to include it in the novel. And the reason is basically I wanted to show that our language still exists and it can thrive in an English text. So before I get into some of the explanations, I just want to clarify that I am not a fluent speaker of Anishinaabemowin. I grew up in Wasauksing First Nation, where I heard the language regularly from an early age. We learned it in the res school, but I never became a fluent speaker. And I don't fault my family nor my community for that. I, of course, blame Canada for the damage it has done to Indigenous languages. But hopefully through grassroots efforts, we'll be able to one day fully restore our beautiful Anishinaabe language and all Indigenous languages in this land that many of us call Turtle Island. So a question I often get about Moon of the Turning Leaves is, why didn't I include a glossary or a pronunciation guide in the book? And the basic answer is, it's a novel. You know, it's not a language reference. I didn't feel that, a sort of list of words or pronunciation guide would fit in here. And I knew that I'd have the opportunity to explain some of the language otherwise. For example, this particular endeavor. So the language that you see in the book, a lot of the conversational sort of slang is from the dialect that I grew up hearing in Wasauksing. But I think a lot of the grammatical foundation you'll see is based a lot on the learning I did with Dr. Marianne Corbière, who's from Wikwemkong. She was very instrumental in ensuring that I learned some more intermediate elements of the language in recent years, and I give her full credit. And I want to say chimigwesh to her again for all her help in putting the Anishinaabe language in this novel. So chimigwesh, once again, Marianne, really appreciate it. So what I'll do just over the next few minutes is go over how some of the vowels sound in Anishinaabemowin, some of the consonants as well. I'll give you a few examples of some words with phonetic spelling so that you can sort of wrap your head around that. And I'll give a few examples of the dialogue that you see in the novel, how it sounds and what it means for sure. I want to say though that there are many different dialects of Anishinaabemowin. Words are spoken differently and have different meaning from region to region. And this is only my perspective and my very limited knowledge. But I will say the language level you see in the story is the extent of my own skills. I want to make sure not to misrepresent myself in any way. So I'll talk a bit about how you can sound out the words in the novel as you're reading it. And I wrote out some examples here on this pad of paper just to give sort of a visual reference, because I'm not totally confident in the auto captions and how they will generate once I process this video. So I think one of the biggest things to wrap your head around is how the vowels sound in Anishinaabemowin. And there's a very specific system for that. It's called the double vowel system. And if you just search that online, you'll find some elaborate explanations, but I'll give you the very basic rundown of that now. So first you have the letter A. In Anishinaabemowin, it takes on the sound of a short A, commonly in English, you know, like a or a sound. Most importantly, you have the double A, which makes the more drawn out ah sound. And when you see one of these double vowel instances in a word, that's usually where the emphasis of the pronunciation goes, right? So double A makes an ah sound. E is very unique in the Anishinaabe language. E commonly comes at the end of some words, and it makes an or a sound, or a. And I'll give you some, again, concrete examples of this later. In terms of another short vowel, I just is short when you see it just in one instance, one character is a sound. but two I's together makes an E sound. So E, two I's makes an E. And an O is again a short O sound. It's hard to give an example off the top of my head, which is why I wore this shirt. It says shke shkude, and I received this from students at Parry Sound High School on a recent visit. Oshke shkude basically means new fire. So you see some examples of the short vowels right there. And another example of the double vowel is two O's, which makes an O sound. Up in the western parts of Anishinaabe territory, northwestern Ontario predominantly, they pronounce that as more of an oo sound. So for example, here we say bojo, and over that way they say boujou. But when you're hearing it in Moon of the Turning Leaves, it's more of an O sound. And the last thing I wanted to leave you is just this NH combination that you'll see in some words. And that sort of changes the sound of the vowels whenever you see it. It makes it more of a nasally sound. So an example is gigon. So gigon is spelled Giigoonh. It has that double O on the end, but adding that NH makes it nasally, gigon. Another example is the word for yes, which is eh. It's spelled E-N-H, eh. So keep that in mind when you see an NH at the end of a vowel or vowel combination. I won't go deeply into the consonants because they're mostly phonetic as you see them. They sound as they do by and large in English, but some of them take on different sounds depending on where they're placed in the word. So B is one example. So at the start of a word, it's B, but sometimes at the end, it's more of a P sound. So bakade, I'm hungry, or hungry, or gijep, which is morning. Gijep, that's usually a B at the end of that. Ch is a common sound. CH is just ch. D is another one of those variable sounds like B. At the start of a word, it sounds like a D sound, but at the end, it's more of a T. So debwe, truth, or onaquit, cloud. So depending on where the D is, it can take on a different sound. G is always a G sound in Anishinaabemowin. It doesn't have the variation like in English. That's where we use J, the J sound. So G is always G and J is always J. S can sometimes take on more of a Z sound, like a Z. And again, that depends on where the letter is in the writing. But by and large, it's still an S sound. But sh is another common sound you see or hear in Anishinaabemowin, and we'll see that in some of the examples I'm about to show you. And zh is also, it's not a unique sound to Anishinaabemowin, but it's quite common. I said Moon of the Turning Leaves, jinkade. The book is called Moon of the Turning Leaves, jinkade. So zh is one of those common sounds too. So I figured I'd give you the pronunciations for characters because that's, the words you're going to see the most as you read the story. Nangos, of course, is one of the main characters. And that name is pronounced Nangos. So the emphasis is on the O, Nangos. Her brother, Maingan. So you sound it out, it's ma, that's short A, in, then gun. Maingan. Maingan means wolf, and Nangos, of course, means little star. Jabadis is a character we see later on in the story. Jabadis. So the emphasis is usually on the last syllable there, dis. Another character, a word I just said a moment ago, onaquit. We see him later on. There's examples of that short A, onaquit. Quit, and the D takes on more of a T sound, as mentioned earlier. So onaquit, another character you meet later on in the story. And Shkabewis, one of the characters we see at Zuswin. Shkabewis. So you shka, the double A, bewis. Be, that E sound, and wis. Shkabewis, that's another character. So I figured giving you the character names would be helpful because those are some of the words you're going to see the most. And I figured I'd just give you a few place names so you can sound them out. Shkidinakiwin, that's the new village they've created just away from the old reserve site. Shkidinakiwin, there's a double I there. Dinakiwin. Zuswin, without giving too much of the story away, for those of you who haven't read it yet, that's another settlement they come across. Zaswin, it means nest. Wigwaswatigong, that's ultimately where they want to end up. That's their former home on the north shore of Lake Huron, the place of the birch trees. Wigwaswatigong. So there's a lot of double vowel examples there. So wigwaswatigong. Wigwaswatigong. So very long words in Anishinaabemowin sometimes. And I just figured I'd give you a few words that come up in the text pretty regularly. Jibwa is how they refer to the time before. Jibwa. Jibwa basically means before. Zhaonong is how they refer to the world to the south. Zhaonong. And that means south, basically. Very literal translations. And ambe is a word you'll see come up often. It kind of means like a let's go or let's do something. So ambe jada, let's go. Ambe wisneda, let's eat. So ambe is, just sort of emphasizes that motion of getting going. And so lastly, I wanted to give some examples of dialogue that you see in parts of the story. And I wanted to use as many examples with as many different vowels as possible, just so that you know how things sound. Because as mentioned, a lot of the vowels are similar to the sounds they make in English, right? So, chik gimawan nonga nakshik. Chik gimawan nonga nakshik. It's raining a lot this evening. Chik gimawan nonga nakshik. So there's a few different examples of those vowel sounds there. Mijgo wi nibing. Mijgo wi nibing. Summer's almost here. Mijgo wi nibing. Another example. Ani andagok. Apish ebzayak. Hi crows. Where are you going? Ani andagok. Apish ebzayak. So some complicated grammar in there too, here and there. But don't worry about that. You just worry about how it sounds, if that's going to enhance your reading experience. And just lastly, this is sort of another example of some really long words. Gidon sasta nawa na Anishinaabemowin. Gidon sasta nawa na Anishinaabemowin. Do you understand how I speak in Anishinaabe? Sort of. That's sort of how you translate it. Or basically, do you understand me speaking Anishinaabe? Or do you understand the Anishinaabe language? Is what that means. So yeah, that's about it. As much as I wanted to share with you. Chimigwesh, thank you very much for your interest in Moon of the Turning Leaves. I'll leave some links in some descriptions of this video and elsewhere on social media if you want to do more learning. But I just wanted to say again, very thankful in the interest in this story. It's been out for a couple of months now, and I just couldn't be more flattered or honored by the buzz around it and the readership, and also the enthusiasm for the Anishinaabe language. It means a lot to a lot of us. My goal is to eventually become a fluent speaker, and writing it in the story, writing Anishinaabemowin, is a way to motivate myself to try a little harder to learn it, but also to document it in English literature, in Canadian literature. So, Bamapi, Chimigwech.